بعمل أهل النار حتى ما يكون بينه وبينها إلا ذراع فيسبق عليه الكتاب فيعمل بعمل أهل الجنة فيدخلها. رواه Bukhari Muslim. So verily the creation of any one of you takes place, and it's narrated by Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Verily the creation of any one of you takes place when he is assembled in his mother's womb. For 40 days he is a drop of fluid, then it becomes a clot for a similar period. Thereafter it is a lump looking like it has been chewed for a similar period. Then an angel is sent to him, who breathes the ruh, the spirit or soul, into him. This angel is commanded to write 4 decrees. He writes down his provision, his lifespan, his deeds, whether he will be among the wretched or the blessed. I swear by Allah, there is no God but He. One of you may perform the deeds of the people of paradise until there is not but an arm's length between him and it, and that which has been written will outstrip him, so that he will perform the deeds of the people of hellfire. One of you may perform the deeds of the people of the hellfire till there is not between an arm's length between him and it, and that which will be written will overtake him, so that he performs the deeds of the people of paradise and enters therein. Narrated by Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim. So this was narrated to us by Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, who again, like every Sahaba that we've come across, has a very, very long story, and I think we should eventually do some series if someone is able to on the different Sahaba, and I would be pleased with them. Abdullah Mas'ud was a shepherd before he became Muslim. He was a shepherd, and one time the Prophet ﷺ was walking with Abu Bakr and he mentioned that he was hungry, and so they saw Abdullah ibn Mas'ud with a flock of sheep, and so they went up to them and he asked if they could use some of their milk. And Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said that it didn't belong to him, it belonged to someone named Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayt, so he couldn't give him the milk. So the Prophet ﷺ said, could you give us one of the sheep that's empty, like has no more milk left? And he said, sure. So the Prophet ﷺ took one of the sheep that had already been milked and there was no milk inside of it, and he started milking it, and milk gushed out of it. So Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, teach me, O Messenger of Allah. So at this point he had become Muslim. And the Prophet ﷺ told him, Barakallahu feek, you are going to be a man who will have a lot of knowledge. And Abdullah ibn Mas'ud ended up being one of the most knowledgeable and scholarly of all the Sahaba. He came from very humble origins, but he spent all of his time with the Prophet. He was one of the Sahaba that spent the most times with the Prophet ﷺ, and he would do everything from carrying his sandals for the Prophet ﷺ, carrying the pillow of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ, when he would take a nap, he would often ask Abdullah ibn Mas'ud to wake him up from the nap. And so they were very, 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 very close. And so it kind of also shows you some of the etiquette between a student and the Prophet ﷺ, where it wasn't just this dry relationship. He was there to serve the Prophet ﷺ, and he loved the Prophet, and the Prophet ﷺ loved him. So that's about Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, and he goes on, he lives for 30 something, I think 33 or 34 years after the Prophet ﷺ, or after the year Hijrah, before he passed away. And so he narrates about 840 hadith, one of the people who narrated a lot of hadith to us. And so even the terms haddathana, so if you read hadith, generally the scholars, when they're narrating hadith from each other, they say the word haddathana, which means that it was told to us. And that word comes from this hadith and a few others. Most hadith don't say haddathana. When the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they're saying something on the Prophet, usually they say qala or some other word. Only a few hadith use the word haddathana. But scholars took this terminology so that they can relate from each other also. So usually they say haddathana, haddathana. So it kind of has this chain. And so this is one of those roots of those chains. And when he starts this hadith, he says, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a sadiq al-masduq. Sadiq means truthful. Masduq means someone who's believed or trusted. And it's very interesting that he puts it before this particular hadith. A lot of people reflect on it and say that this hadith deals with a lot of the kind of unseen, right? It's the how the embryo is developed, when the spirits go into the body. It deals with predestination and all these things. And so, especially at that time, it seemed unbelievable that someone can have any such knowledge. I mean, if you think about it, embryology, as we know it today, it's only really been concrete science for the past 100 years, maybe the past 200 years, we started learning about it a little more. So for someone 1,400 years ago to be making such specific claims about embryology, and then today we have it verified, through science and through what we understand about the body, is a miracle, and it's amazing, and it should reaffirm our faith. And he's right here, kind of, you can imagine in Mecca, or people who are antagonistic to the Prophet throughout history have kind of harped on this hadith and poked fun at it. Oh, he's making these claims and no one can verify it. I mean, now it's verified, and he's saying that he's a sadiq and masduq. So it's a very beautiful introduction to the hadith. And so the hadith starts with three phases that the human being in the mother's womb goes through. The first is a nutfa, which means a drop, and that lasts for 40 days. And then after that, alaqa, which means a clot. And then after that, there's a mudghah, which means a clump of meat. And so that's a period of about 120 days, 4 months in total. And so a lot of people, there's this hadith and a few other hadith and a verse in the Quran that mention this period of 40 days, usually as a time of change and transformation. And so a lot of people take that, when you hear that, you should perform a habit for 40 days before you develop it. A lot of it's based in this hadith, or also in the Quran, where Musa is told to do i'tikaf for 40 days before he receives revelation. And so this idea of trying to purify yourself for that period of time to create real change. And so Mufti Hussein Kamani was reflecting on this, and he said, a lot of times people say, oh yeah, I tried, and then you ask them, what do you mean you tried? Yeah, I went once or twice, I tried something and they didn't like it, or they couldn't do it. And he's saying that it's not about, that doesn't mean you tried. Trying means something for 40 days you're really trying, improving yourself every single day. If you want to start praying, then for 40 days make it, okay, I'm not going to miss a prayer today. And for 40 days you just do that, and it'll become a lifestyle for you. If you say, okay, every day I'm going to read a little bit of the Quran, after a 40-day period, it's just a habit. That's how you build a habit. If you want to go to the gym, if you want to do a diet, if you sleep, you'll see the same kind of recommendations. You need to do it for a long period of time before it becomes a habit. So this is one of the reflections a lot of people take away from this. And then for the soul getting blown into the body, the angels deliver the souls to the body. And this is where, when there's a conversation of fiqh and abortion and contraception, people usually rely on this hadith as one of the foundational hadith for that conversation. And if you're interested in that, Yaqeen Institute, Omar Suleiman, they have great articles online and videos on it. And in the podcast, there's also some information. I don't want to get wrapped up in it, so I'm not going to talk about it. But if you're interested, it's there. And then the angels, after your soul is blown into your body, the angels are commanded to write 4 things. Allah commands them to write 4 things. They are, the first is rizq. Rizq is sustenance. That's what you earn throughout your life, or where you get it from, how much you make, all that things, your housing, all that stuff. Ajal is the next one, which is lifespan. How long do you live, and how do you spend your life? The next is amal, which is deeds, your actions. And then there's shaqi or sa'id, which is, we literally translate it as miserable or happy, joyful, and its implication is really hell or heaven. So is this person going to be in the end wretched? Is he going to be a failure, go to hell? Or is he going to be successful, go to heaven? And so the next part of the hadith says that the deeds of the righteous, people are going to do righteous deeds or righteous seeming deeds all the way until they're so close to heaven that they're just a handspan, they could reach out and touch it. And then their destinies, I guess how you try to translate it, will overtake them, and then they'll do an evil deed that sends them to hell. And the vice versa is true, that someone who's so close to hell has been doing evil deeds, will be so close to hell, and then they'll do a good deed, and then they'll be taken to heaven. And so, first of all, this major takeaway from this part of the hadith is that you should never be content. You can never be okay, I'm good, alhamdulillah, I'm going to Isha, I'm making it to Fajr, I'm doing all these great deeds. You can never sit there and be satisfied with the deeds that you have and where you are, because you never know that tomorrow you might flip, you might be bad. And the same thing, it gives us hope that if you are right now stuck in a situation where you feel like you're in a rut, or you're doing something bad, there's no hope for me, tomorrow could change, and the year after that can change, you never know. There's still time between here and your death, and so even in the last moments of life, things could flip. So this is kind of telling us not to feel safe or hopeless until our lives end. The next question that kind of comes up is how is that fair? Someone who's doing good their whole lives, or bad their whole lives, how does in the last few moments, how can their whole life switch? How are they punished for that? And so a lot of scholars have reflected on this point, and I think a better place to start is this hadith. A lot of people say this part of the hadith is something called mudraj min rawi, which means that the translation is it was added by the narrator. So this is something Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is saying and adding to the hadith. However, when a sahabi talks about something, especially when he says here, I swear by God, when a sahabi talks about something in the unseen that they could not have known, and it's a sahabi, then it is automatically assumed that it's taken from the Prophet ﷺ. That means he's taking another hadith from the Prophet ﷺ and combining it with this hadith. So essentially what Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is doing is, he has a hadith and he's explaining it through another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So it's really almost like 2 conjoined hadiths that we have here, that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is saying. It's not that the Prophet ﷺ said all this in one sentence. And so it's very important because there's other hadith that are very similar to the second part. For example, there's a hadith that says that one of you will perform the acts of people of paradise as it appears before the eyes of people. And so this kind of gives us a hint to what it means here. What it means is that someone who their whole lives look like they've been doing good deeds, and their deeds are the same deeds that the good people do. Like, so for example, like you have the hypocrites in the society of Medina, right? So at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there were people who on the outside proclaimed Islam and did the actions of the Muslims, but on their insides they were not sincere in it, and if they were, it might have even been antagonistic towards the Muslims. So they're doing the same things that Sahaba who are going to enter paradise, they're doing the same things that they're doing on the outside, but their hearts are not sincere, they're not there, they have other intentions, all these things. So what it's saying is that it's those people who throughout their lives got away with their insincerity and looking good on the outside can be exposed in the last moments of their life. And those are the people who really should be concerned. So what you really should be concerned with, not that it's this arbitrary, you might be the best person and then all of a sudden you flip, so you feel hopeless. It's this checking your intention, like just because you're doing good now doesn't mean that you're doing it out of sincerity, and it doesn't mean it's the right intention. And so it's about rechecking your intention. And the other thing it kind of brings up here is that this concept we brought up a few lessons ago in Hadith 2 about like the Jabariya, right? A lot of people read this Hadith and they feel like, okay, well, it's like my life's predestined, there's nothing I can do. And we already kind of talked about this before, but that idea of predestination where you have no will and everything that you're doing is not at all because of your decisions, is a concept called Jabariya, which is an extreme in Islam that's like basically outside of what's accepted in Islam. And that's because Allah gives us and He tells us that we do have a will and that we're held responsible and that He will be just with us. And you can't be just if what you do is not from your own volition. And so that's part of our trust in Allah, is that there is this system that's working. And essentially, like one way I heard it described that I really found kind of easy to understand was that what's written by Allah is, first of all, what we do is not caused by what's written, but it kind of matches. So like what we do is matching what's happening and written by with Allah, because Allah's knowledge precedes everything that we do, and He's not bound by time. And so He's, like in the past, present, future, it's the same Allah. Like He's not constricted by His creation of time, and we are constricted by the creation of time, and we're given a free will. So just because Allah knows the outcome does not mean that we are not held responsible for what we have. And then the same thing happens for someone who does bad. It might seem like they do bad, and on the exterior, like they might be in prison, for example, or they might be doing like drugs, and they're growing up in a difficult context. And you judge that person like, wow, that person's doing really bad things. And this hadith is saying like, no, you don't know what's in their heart, and maybe even just like one action at the end of their life will flip their whole situation. And so that's essentially what we get out of this hadith. Not to feel hopeless, always trust in Allah and the Messenger. Submit ourselves to revelation. Here the Prophet ﷺ is talking about something that we found out only 1400 years later. And so if there's other things where we still haven't found that out, still it's to submit ourselves to the Prophet ﷺ and God. And may Allah accept from us, and may Allah guide us, and may Allah protect us from becoming those people who at the end of their lives flip to the people of hellfire, and may Allah protect us and guide us to the people who flip towards doing good at all. Inshallah.